Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and today we bring you an encore presentation of one of our very favorite episodes. Our team is working behind the scenes right now to bring you more amazing stories when our live programming returns in February. If there is an urgent update from the health system, of course, we'll be right here and let you know first. Until then, please enjoy this encore presentation and make it a great day. Coming up today, the tough conversations. How do you explain cancer to kids? Expert advice on creating space for honest dialogue. Good morning, I'm Jessica Lovell, and welcome to the Morning Medical Update. It is not an easy conversation to tell a child someone they love has cancer. There's no step-by-step guide that is guaranteed to work. Some people exclude their children from the conversations altogether, but research shows it's important to be honest about cancer. To talk more about how to do that, we're going to bring in Amy Ansley, who was treated at the University of Kansas Cancer Center and had to explain her breast cancer diagnosis to her children. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
Thank you for being with us and sharing your story. It's a really good conversation. We talk so much about cancer, and we kind of, it's such an adult conversation often, and so to be talking about how we talk to kids is really, really important. And Amy, you had some help with those conversations from Turning Point, and you turned to some children's programs to help with that. So we have today program director Annie Seal joining us. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Thanks for having me.
Good. Thank you for being here. You are a certified child life specialist. We're going to learn exactly what that means and how you're helping families like Amy's. Also joining us via webcam today is Amy's breast medical oncologist, Dr. Ann O'Day. She's also the medical director of the Breast Cancer Survivorship Program at the University of Kansas Cancer Center. Dr. O'Day, always good to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you this morning.
Yes, great to see you. We'll get with you in just one moment. I want to start with Amy because I want to start about talking about your diagnosis. You found a lump in December of last year?
Yeah, around October.
Okay, so last fall, about a year ago.
Yeah.
What did doctors tell you? What did they discover?
First, they just thought it was like some sebaceous filament, and it was time for my annual exam. And so I went in and saw my OB, and she's like, oh, just to be sure, we're going to have you go in and do like a mammogram and an ultrasound. And so those kind of came back, and she's like, we're still not sure. Let's do a biopsy. And so they did that, and then that came back in December, and then that's when I got connected with Dr. O'Day.
So did you feel something? Did you feel a lump? How did you know, since this was before your annual mammogram?
I could actually see it.
See it.
And so then just
made a call.
Yeah, something we have to take care of.
You have two children.
Yes.
What are their names and what are their ages?
Davis, he will be 9 in December, and Renly just turned 5 last week.
So 8 and 4 when you were diagnosed.
Yes.
I want to talk about how you started this conversation because you were pretty candid about the fact that you thought maybe you kind of messed up because you didn't name it right away. You were kind of dodging, as I think a lot of parents do when tough conversations come up. You think you're going to know what to say when that happens, but you sometimes don't. How did you start the conversation originally, and then when did you decide to change how you explained it to them?
All kind of happened so quickly because I was with Dr. O'Day and I felt comfortable, and I was like, okay, so what are our next steps? So it was just kind of from the beginning, we just jumped in. Okay, he got cancer, we're going to do the double mastectomy. And we didn't know at that time if I was going to have chemo. So I thought, oh gosh, do I really need to tell them that it's cancer yet? Or not, because I wasn't going to see a lot of the physical side effects unless, I knew I was going to have chemo. And so I just started by saying that there were some cells in my body that needed to be removed that could make me sick, so that's what we were going to do. And then I had 6 weeks off of school. And I quickly realized, that wasn't exactly right. And I know as a school counselor, and I'm like, did I mess up?
You were thinking you knew better. You're used to talking to kids. Yeah. This is your thing. But, it's different when you're on a different type of conversation. Yes. So you work with children, school counselor. Did you have to take a different approach, similar approach when talking to them about what was going on with you?
So it kind of just happened organically because I think I went in the 20th of December, and that was right after we had gone on winter break. And then I was going to have we decided we were going to have my surgery, get in right away. And so I didn't come back to school after winter break, I had a sub counselor come in, and so the kids didn't really know a lot until I came back. And then some of them had heard stuff and some of them hadn't. And I'd have kids raise their hands during counselor lessons. We know why you were gone. And I'm like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? And I talked to Dr. O'Day, and she said, you know what? That's not your responsibility to worry about how the kids are going to react. They have parents, and you need to take care of yourself and your kids in this situation. And so that kind of helped me to take a breath, and I wasn't going to mess them up either.
And I can see, Dr. O'Day, I got to bring you in because I can totally see you having this conversation. Like, girl, you have got to focus on you. Kids come first.
On yourself and your
right.
health and your children. And I think, I do take care of a lot of women that are teachers or school counselors like Amy. And, they care so much about their students, and they want to make sure that they're having a positive impact and setting a positive example. And, it's a fine balance between taking care of yourself and your own family and then worrying about the responsibility that you have, to those kids. So I always say, right now is around the time of teacher conferences. All the patients that are going through treatment right now that are teachers, I say, be very honest with your parents, let them know what's going on, engage them so that they can talk to their own children and support them at home. And then you focus on your health and your family.
Yeah, and you mentioned school. I know we have a teacher at my child's elementary school going through the same thing, and we get lots of great updates so that our kids can really engage in the process and wear colors to support this woman. But the parents are getting that information first so that we can kind of trickle that down to our kids and talk about how they're feeling. So hopefully taking a little bit of the burden off of the school and the woman going through this. So Annie, just what are your thoughts? How does Turning Point help patients and caregivers? When you meet somebody like Amy, how do you jump in and help out?
Yeah, so we have a variety of, there's a variety of ways that we help. We have a variety of programs and groups that we help, which I know we've talked about on this program a lot before. But one of the ways that we helped Amy was through more individualized approach, which is our parent consultation. So Amy kind of reached out and was looking for resources on how to talk with her kids about cancer. And so that was kind of an individualized approach, which was a parent consultation. So she reached out and we were able to discuss the various ways to talk to her kids about her diagnosis and what she wanted to do based on her kids' ages and what information she felt like she wanted to share.
I love that she just found that resource. Are enough people reaching out and doing that?
We do get a lot of referrals from people like Dr. O'Day and the social workers, and people see us from our community calendar, which is kind of all over the city and in the health system. So people can reach out for those individual consultations, and in addition to our groups, and our programs are not only in person at Turning Point, but also on Zoom. And a lot of those conversations just even happen over the phone. So parents can call and ask questions. And I wanted to tell Amy too that I know she was questioning kind of initially, like, did I do it wrong? And the question is, no, you didn't do it wrong, because so often, we're wondering, like, what do I tell my kids? And that question sometimes has to be, like, what do we know to be true right now? And what she knew to be true right in that moment was that she had some bad cells and that she was having surgery. So no, she didn't do it wrong.
All true.
All
true
true.
statements.
All true statements.
Well, how much information should you provide your children? And then maybe go through those age where you talk about teenagers, preteens, and she had a 4 and an 8-year-old. That's a tricky age.
Yeah. So that's why I always kind of have people step back a little bit and ask that question, what do I know to be true in this moment? Because as adults, we're often so forward thinking, and we have that perpetual to-do list kind of running through our heads of what's the next steps. And so if we start at that base question, like, what do we know to be true right now? Kids are very present oriented. So if we start at the present of what we know in this moment and kind of start there like Amy and I did, then you kind of are giving your kids, like, I use the analogy of chapters in a book. So we kind of start with that beginning chapter. And so she started with, I have some bad cells in my body, that we know that was kind of that first chapter. And so based on your child's age, you can kind of use different analogies or different metaphors that they might understand to kind of start the conversation.
And you provide that information
Yes.
specifically. That's so great. I love that. Chapters of a book.
Yeah, and
Maybe we only get to chapter 2 or 3. That
right,
would be great.
you don't need to tell the whole. We don't need to tell the whole story at once, because we kind of just need to give them the information that they need to know in that moment, because they are present oriented. We don't need to tell the whole book at once, because they're not going to remember the whole book at once, for one thing. But kind of just giving little bits of information as it's needed, and we can provide those resources, whether that be talking to them, sending handouts, giving them, maybe videos to watch, giving different information that they might need, or having their kids come in and participate in our programs that we offer.
And your kids did go in and participate in the actual program, right? Like a camp or something? Is that what you said?
Yes, they went to their summer camp, and it was an Olympic theme, and it wasn't completely focused on cancer, but they did like a lot of coping skills things. Like they did yoga and they did crafts and they did so many great things. But my son did come out of there and he was like, wait, so like there's other kids like me.
Yeah.
And he doesn't always say a lot. And so I'm like, well, that was really impactful. So whatever they did, he was able to make that connection. And I think that helped him kind of feel less alone.
Well, just tools to kind of help self-regulate what they're facing. Something that's tough when we talk about cancer, Annie, it also can include the possibility of dying. When do we bring up death?
I think it's one of those things that, first of all, you're 100% right. It is a tough conversation, but I think it's one of those conversations that, like all hard conversations with our kids, we have to kind of frame it in the reference of, we don't want our kids to ever feel alone in any difficult feeling that they might have. So any difficult conversation that we need to have with our kids, whether it be surrounding death or drugs or any hard conversations that we're going to have with our kids, we want them to know that we are available and we're open to talk about those hard topics. And so it's not so much like when we're talking about things, it's that they know that we're available and we're open to talking about things. Because I think so often kids come to us not necessarily looking for answers, but they're looking to see, are we okay with having a hard conversation? And when they come to us and ask a question, do we like either give them that deer in headlights, or do we give them that message that, hey, this is an off subject, like this is off limits, we're not going to talk about this in our family? They're not always looking for that you have the exact right answer. They're looking that you're okay having a hard conversation with them. So in the instance of death, if it's a patient that I'm working with that's maybe a palliative care patient or a patient that's going on to hospice, and they know that their treatment is no longer going to be successful, like they know that they're entering that stage, that they're not looking for curative treatment, that it is time to start having those conversations, then we do start guiding those conversations kind of around that, that the medicine that you've been taking is no longer medicine that's going to help heal your body. And so kind of using language that is very factual, that is very honest, but is gentle, and allowing kids just kind of that space to ask those questions that they have, and knowing that there is really no question that's off limits.
Dr. O'Day, I would imagine these conversations really start with you, because if I'm a mother and I'm sitting with you and get a diagnosis like this, even though maybe death is not something that's really on the table at this point, that's the first question I'm going to ask you. Am I going to live? I have kids. I can't die. So
I think it's so common that for most of my patients that are young moms, their biggest concern is, how is this diagnosis, how is this treatment, whatever this journey is going to look like, how is this going to impact my family? I mean, that is their biggest concern. And if we don't reach out and help them with that, then we're not really helping them, So it's not just about the medicine. It's not just about the surgery. It's how do we help them find resources like Turning Points, like others, whether it's talking to the doctor, talking just a psychologist at Turning Points, whatever the resource is for that individual child. Sometimes it's just the permission for the patient, who's also the parent in this situation, to reach out to other, parents of best friends, maybe a youth minister, maybe a soccer coach, reaching out to the people in your child's life who are their support system and who are their kind of safe and trusted adults. And making sure, as Amy was saying and Annie was saying, creating a safe space so that wherever that child feels comfortable talking, whether it's to the parent, to the co-parent, to the partner, to the minister at church, to the soccer coach, that they feel like they can ask those questions, and creating that safe space for them to do that.
Well, and I love it's like you're working in tandem with Annie and her team, because when something like this happens, you got to get to work. Your job is to get this treatment plan going and then send Amy over to Annie to work on those issues in the home so that you can get to work to do what you do. Tell us about the treatment plan that you put together for Amy. Why did she undergo both a double mastectomy and the chemotherapy?
So when we think about surgery, whether it's breast conservation or mastectomy, that's really what's taking care of what we call the local cancer, the cancer that we can see and that we can measure. When we have certain features of particular cancers that suggest that cancer is more likely to travel through the bloodstream, whether that's a combination of genetic and genomic factors, whether it's anatomic, we see spread of the cancer to the lymph nodes. Depending on that patient's situation, we may need to utilize medications which go into the bloodstream, which travel throughout the body, so that if there is one cell that has gotten a head start, it can be eradicated by that medication. Surgery doesn't do anything to help those cells, right? I kind of use this analogy with patients and also sometimes with their children when I'm talking to them, is we think about your body or your mom's body as kind of a highway. And we know we have this main kind of parking lot here, and we're going to take care of getting the cars out of that parking lot. But if we have cars that are down the road, we have to put medicine throughout that road, throughout that highway system, so we can eradicate those cars that maybe got a head start. So that's just kind of how we talk about it. And I think it's very important for the kids to know they can ask us questions. I think a lot of times the conversations that I have with children, especially the younger kids, they associate doctors and doctors' offices and hospitals with pain, with owies, right, with shots. And so I have had children ask me, what exactly do you do to my mom when she's there, right? Because these treatments often last several hours. So being able to create a conversation around, your mom is not in pain. When she's here with us having treatments, she might be taking a nap. She might be eating popsicles. She might be watching a movie. But she is not in pain. And we're here to support her and make sure that if she does have any symptoms from her cancer, that we can help her with those. And a lot of times you'll see the kids kind of visibly breathe a sigh of relief.
I actually had that same feeling, because I thought, how many times, I think kids are a lot smarter than we realize. And when mom says, hey, everything's going to be okay, I think kids go, are they really? And hearing it from you, saying that mom's going to be okay from a doctor, I think really would be very impactful. And so I think it's hard, I think for moms to hide it all the time.
Absolutely. And I think as moms, our instinct is to fix everything for our children, right? And put on this happy face of I'm a fighter, I'm a warrior, everything's okay. And I feel like, we are given this opportunity, if we ever think about cancer as an opportunity, to model for our children how we would approach a significant health challenge in our life. It's likely that all of us will have those type of challenges at some point in our lifetime. And so to do it with the grace and humility that Amy has done it, sort of modeling for her children, reach out to experts. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's okay to talk to other people. Talking about it as a family is good for all of us. Those types of lessons are lessons that her children will carry into their life in the future, whether it's looking at a health challenge or it's looking at some other significant challenge in their lifetime. So I think, her children, I'm confident, will be better, more empathetic, more sensitive, kind adult someday because of this situation and because of the example that she has set.
Dr. O'Day, you mentioned that Amy had chemotherapy, and we know that one of the side effects is losing the hair, something that's very visibly noticeable, especially when you have young kids or you're working in a school like Amy is. How do you talk through those expectations? Because again, there's the distance of what's going to happen to me long term, but then there's the now of how do I handle what's going to change right now. What are those conversations like?
Absolutely. And I think, it depends very much on the age of the children or the grandchildren, depending on the situation. For younger children, I think they associate that with kind of sickness and maybe thinking that this means mom is sick. And so we try to reframe the conversation and talk about how when we see mom's hair coming out, it isn't a sign that she's sick. It's a sign to us of how well the medication is working in her body. It is an outward visible sign of what that medicine is doing to those cancer cells in her body. And so although we might be sad that mom lost her hair and it might make us feel funny, and when we look at mom, she looks different and she doesn't look like the mom I'm used to looking at, we want to eventually be able to turn that around and reframe it to a celebration of when I see mom's hair fall out, we understand that that's a part of her getting better. And I think that that's how we really have to discuss it and celebrate it. And I have had moms do amazing things with their hairdressers. I've had people go in after hours and have a head shaving party with their kids, and everyone in the family does a mohawk and they take funny pictures, and maybe something that starts out as tears ends up with tons of laughter, tons of memories. Hey, remember mom, that time you had a mohawk? That was awesome. These are the types of stories that you end up hearing, and that really warms my heart. And I know that those families, are modeling for their children how to confront, an obstacle or any challenge for their children in the future. And those lessons just cannot be underemphasized. It is so critically important for us to show our children. It's not to make everything okay for them. It's to show them how to be functioning, healthy adults and how to deal with challenges. And, Amy has just done that so beautifully.
When did your hair start falling out, Amy? And how did you have that pre-conversation? Like, hey, this is going to happen.
Yeah, that was hard. That was one of the actually first things when I talked to my brother on the phone when I had cancer. I said, I think my hair is going to fall out. And I know it's very superficial, but like I've always had long hair and that kind of stuff. And Dr. O'Day's like, it'll start falling out before your second treatment. And she was right. And I was back to school kind of working since I had my double mastectomy, and it just kept falling out. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And one night it just hurt so bad and it just kept falling out. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done with this. My husband was at work and I took the kids upstairs and they got his razor and I'm like, we're just going to start cutting it off. So I didn't know what was going to happen. And we just did. And then it was kind of halfway through and my son's like, Mom, you look like a rock star. And I'm
nothing wrong with that.
Okay. And I said, well, got to do the rest of it. So we just kept going and he helped. My daughter was kind of looking like, what's going on? But I just let him take it, and we all just kind of had an impromptu party, and
how'd they handle it?
It was over. And my son said, you kind of look like an alien, but like kind of in a good way. And I'm like,
alien.
well,
okay.
It'll grow back. And so then that was really it. And my daughter just always, Mom, your hair's growing back. Your hair's growing back. She's always wanting to
touch it and feel it. I love what Dr. O'Day said about it. Says that when your hair falls out, it's a sign that the medication is working, that it's helping mom. Annie, jump in here with that, because that's got to be a big one. She says, I know it's superficial. I don't know if I've had a woman on here that hasn't said, hey, my hair's my thing. I want my hair back. Nothing wrong with that.
And I think too, it's the outward sign that tells everybody else in the world, like, what is going on with you.
Yeah.
So I think whether it be for adults or kids that are enduring this, like, that's kind of the signal to everybody else, like, what's happening in your family. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of your story to tell. And that's kind of now you're telling the world what's going on. So, but I think what you did was perfect with your kids. You let them be a part of it. You showed them that, yeah, this is hard, but you let them be a part of that experience, and you didn't hide it from them. You didn't make it shameful, and you let them see all aspects of it. So I know that parents often are concerned about that. Like, what are my kids going to think? Is it going to be embarrassing to them? Mm-hmm. Or what are they going to think? So again, I think that's just an opportunity to have those conversations with your kids about, like, this is what's happening to me. But as Dr. O'Day said, explaining to them, like, this is why this is happening. And when that is happening, it means the medicine is doing a job in my body. And so giving them the language for that helps them give some context to the situation. And that's what they're needing. They're needing context to what they see, the same thing that all of us see as adults that's happening around us, but they just don't always have the language to know, to put words to it.
And it's tough to be the mom, especially when you have kids. Our kids are kind of similar in age, and it's like, as the mom, you're always. I had a dime every time I heard my kids say things like, "I wish your hair was longer, Mom. I wish that you looked like somebody else's mom, or I wish that you'd wear this color of lipstick, or you looked this way, looked this way." There's a visual about the mom, and so it's tough, and you want to meet their expectations, whatever that is. But it's not. But it's a good lesson, and it's not always the way it's going to be. So lots of options. There's scarves and wigs and all sorts of things. What did you settle on and why?
I did a wig, and I knew I wanted like a natural hair wig, so I tried on lots of different ones. It was a whole wig situation too.
Was it fun? Did you like doing it?
It was like, it was a little weird at first, like, because you try on all these things, I'm like, whoa, that's not a good look. So, but yeah, it was kind of fun to try to find something, and they did such a good job matching my final wig to what my hair kind of looked like.
And then you took some photos. I have to ask about McNasty and Stella. Tell us about these people.
So the McNasty one was when my hair was starting to fall out after my first treatment, but I was at school, but it hurt so bad, and I was like, okay, what am I gonna do? Because my first Stella wig, that my people at my school, we had like a little vote, and they helped me name the wigs. And so Stella wasn't ready yet, and so I was trying to keep her in with a little Amazon wig, and that was McNasty. And then finally Stella came in, but she was still too big, so then we had to have the one that I have on now, and so we made it a little contest and gave a little gift card and had all the staff vote, and so this one is Princess Consuela.
Of course. Of course it is. And why wouldn't it be? That is the perfect name for that. I love that. But yeah, it's interesting. It sounds like you and your kids were able to make this a journey.
Yes, and just because you don't always think you do it right in the beginning, just being there for them and kind of setting that stage, like Annie said, and letting them know you're a safe place for questions and kind of letting them guide that.
You had some issues with your nails as well?
Yeah, it was very weird. I'm like, okay, wait, what's happening? I lost my hair. And that kind of happened later. And I showed them to Dr. O'Day, and she's like, yeah, that's a sign that the chemo's working, and then just kind of working your way out of your body. But
another thing I'm sure the kids noticed, though.
Yes.
What's going on with your nails, Mom?
And they picked up on all the things, and so we just got to have the conversation that was kind of like the hair, and it was the medicine doing its job, and they were usually like, oh, okay, can I have a snack now? Whatever.
Right, of course. All right, be sure to ask your questions. You can use the chat on YouTube or Facebook. You can email the Medical News Network. All that information is there on your screen. I want to ask Dr. O'Day about talking with kids, and also Annie, you as well. Well, let's start with Turning Point, but how do you support patients in starting these conversations?
First I think it's really important to find out where the patient is at. Like, where are they at emotionally in this? And what are they ready to talk about? Because sometimes you have to kind of think about you as the parent, like, where are you at in the journey, and what are you ready to talk about and tell your kids? Like, that's kind of the first point is, as a parent, what are you ready to talk about? And kind of exploring that a little bit and getting comfortable with that. And then kind of following up on that with how old is your child, and what conversations do you want to have? And then discovering where in the journey are you, and what do you want your child to know? You want to make sure that your child is getting your story from you. You don't want them to be overhearing it from other people. And then helping them kind of get this information, and then knowing that this is not a one and done conversation. That you're not going to just tell them all this information one time and it's going to be over. Like, this is going to be a conversation that you keep having, because this is a process that keeps happening.
We had a patient on that had their kids write down questions for the doctor. Dr. O'Day, would that be a good idea?
Yeah.
If a kid said, hey, I want to ask Dr. O'Day some questions, are you open to having them write them down and submit them right to you?
Oh, of course. I usually set up like a FaceTime call with them and let them ask me directly. So I really love talking to kids, and I have no training. I have no formal anything other than I'm a mom and an aunt and a stepmom, and I'm just doing the best that I can. But I really love talking to them, and when I see their eyes and their faces kind of relax when they start asking me questions and we start talking and they engage, it's really it's actually really rewarding, and I love that they feel comfortable to do that. And sometimes they start out being super quiet. I'll have teenage boys that are like, and they're not even engaging at all. And so I'll just start out by saying, a lot of kids want to know X, Y, or Z, and we'll start talking through that. And then next thing you know, they start opening up. They ask tons of questions, and I think the common ones are for younger children, making sure mom's not in pain. They want to know why this happened. It's very important. We emphasize cancer is not COVID, right? It's not contagious. I have had kids tell me that their fears that dad who sleeps in the same bed is going to get the cancer also, or dad who's helping change the drains after a breast cancer surgery is going to get cancer because he's touching the drain. These are the types of things that we think are so obvious, and they're just not to kids. And so creating a space where they can say what their fears are, and we can a lot of times dispel them. And I think for them, just even seeing me, having the ability to talk to me, having the ability to ask questions, it takes away the fear of children that all the adults are sort of in on it together, right? That we're all in on this big secret. None of us are being honest with them. None of us are telling them kind of how bad it is, right? By giving the children the ability to ask questions directly to the healthcare team, that alone, just the opportunity to talk to them, to ask questions, will help a lot with a lot of their anxieties.
And of course, you need support from family and the community and friends. I would imagine it came out in droves for you.
Yes, absolutely. My school family was absolutely amazing. They supported me through every stage of chemo, sent gift cards and bags and all of that. Of course, my family and my best friends and all of that just really helped to support me.
And millions of Jayhawk fans.
Yes.
Jayhawk Nation behind you. Looks like you got a shout out from the voice of the Jayhawks. Tell us about this.
That was really special. My best friends kept going, "Are you watching the game? You're watching the game." I'm like, why does she keep asking me if I'm watching the game? Of course I'm watching the game. And so I got to be the cancer survivor of the game, and they did a little spiel on there, and that was like super special. And of course I cried because this was like kind of as I was going through the chemo, but it's just like people just kept doing things for me, and I'm like, it just can't get any better, and then it just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
So.
And the best part is hearing the sound of that bell ring.
Yes.
Tell us about this moment. This marked the end of your treatment. What do you remember from this day?
Well, they give you like a little paper to read, and I kind of looked like I was reading it, but I really didn't read it because I just wanted to go and ring the bell. And I think it said you're supposed to ring it 3 times, but I just got very excited that I was done, so I kind of
ding,
ring it a lot.
That works too. Well, we love to hear that. I want to get to some questions from our viewers, and Jeremy wants to know. Any recommendations on how you might have these tough conversations with kids at different ages or developmental levels?
Yeah, so each developmental level definitely requires different information. I think the younger the child, you consider, let me reframe that. Basically, each age group wants to know how this pertains to them. So questions on, how is this going to affect my life? Because let's face it, kids are egocentric. So no matter what age they are, it has some level of how does this affect me? That being said, I think you do need to answer questions honestly. Let them ask questions as well, and let them have some input on the conversation, so that we're not just talking beyond the point that they're done listening. So, because sometimes we have a tendency to just keep giving information, you can tell that they're done listening. But for each age group, there's definitely letting them know, like naming the diagnosis, always giving it a name, not just calling it an illness, like saying what it is, and then letting them know how it's going to impact kind of your family. So if there's treatment, if there's surgery, what part of the body it's going to affect. So just some really basic, simple things simple
makes
things like
sense.
that.
Amy wants to know if Amy has noticed any changes in her children since the diagnosis.
Yeah, at first, they kind of didn't really want to go to school, and because I think I didn't really share with them everything that was happening and why it was happening, so they were just kind of confused, like, well, why are you staying home? Why are you not going to school? And so once we were able to say, hey, this is cancer, this is what it is, what questions do you have? They've just realized that I'm a safe space for them and that they can come and ask me anything. And if I don't know the answer, it's okay to say that to
Were
them.
they afraid to leave you? Were they clingy? Did they want to be close to you?
They did after the surgery, just because they didn't quite understand, like, wait, what is happening? You're here for 6 weeks. Why are we still going to school? And my son had never been like that. And my daughter, really, she loves going to preschool. And so that was kind of hard at first.
Doing better now, though?
Yes, they love going to school, and they know that I'm going to be okay. And my daughter announces to everybody wherever we go, hey, my mom doesn't have cancer anymore.
That was my next question. It was, where do we stand with the kids? Yeah, exactly. Leave it to them. Just shout it at the world.
Yeah.
So where do you stand with your cancer diagnosis now?
So I am just, I guess, what they call in remission, and they're
You can say the word. That's
watching
great.
it, and I go every 3 months for checks and labs and all of that, and just feeling really good.
Feeling good. Can't ask for anything better than that. Dr. O'Day, what do you want the big takeaway from our conversation to be today?
I think the biggest thing for moms especially is, you don't have to be perfect. None of us know how to do this, how to be a mom who's going through cancer treatment. So ask for help. Ask your healthcare team. Look for community resources. Ask if there's a social worker that can connect you to resources like Turning Point. And really don't be afraid to have these conversations with your kid. There's no right or wrong way to do it. The biggest thing is just to be open and to create a space where they feel comfortable talking to you. I think just don't put this pressure on yourself that you have to be perfect and never be tired and never cry. It's okay for our kids to see us be upset. That's real life. And we're modeling for them that it's okay to express that someday. I think kids, one of the most impactful books I ever read was, kids learn what they live, right? They see what we are doing, we are modeling for them. And if that's what we model, then that's what we are showing that we expect our kids to be in the future. I don't ever want my girls to grow up thinking they have to be perfect, all the time. Absolutely not. We're real humans. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to look for resources. All of those things are really super healthy.
Great message, Dr. O'Day. Thank you. Annie, what's the big takeaway?
Well, Dr. O'Day kind of stole some of my.
She always does. She always
She's
stole
so
some
good.
good ideas.
She's so good. I think I would kind of ditto what she said, but I think it's just don't be afraid of saying the wrong thing, and so that you say nothing. So sometimes saying something or saying, I'm also scared, or I sometimes don't know what to do in this situation. Like really just validating the way you feel to your kids lets them see, or if parents often say to me, I'm so afraid I'm going to become emotional in this conversation that I don't know how to do this. And so if you become emotional, that's okay. Just say, I get scared about this, or I'm worried about this, or if you cry, just validate that, because our kids have to see that just because a conversation is difficult doesn't mean that we don't have it. And so when we model that to our kids, it lets them know that, like she said, anything through life that's hard, just because it's hard doesn't mean that we don't talk about it. And we want our kids to know that they can come to us and talk about anything in life, whether it be cancer, or whether it be something hard happening at school, or whether they see something difficult happening in their life, or some other challenge going on. We want them to know, no matter if they're 2 and having trouble, or whether they're 20 and having trouble, that we are there and we're available, because parents protect kids, but kids protect parents.
They do, yeah.
And so I think that would be my key takeaway, is just be there and be present, and just, it's in the room and everybody's seeing it happen. So just be a little bit open to talking about it.
Thank you for the work you do with our patients and their families. It's good
Thank you.
stuff. Thank you for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you.
Amy, what do you want the big takeaway from your story to be?
Just know that you're not alone. There's resources out there to help you. Dr. O'Day has been phenomenal. Of course, Annie with Turning Point has been phenomenal. And I think the biggest thing that I would have done in the beginning is just give the cancer a name. That kind of takes the mystery away from it. And then just having those honest conversations with your kids. And like Annie said, you didn't mess anything up. You're not going to mess anything up. The biggest thing that they're going to remember is that you were there for them.
I've learned so much from this program because this goes way beyond cancer. Lots of tools to use on any tough conversations to have with kids. Name the cancer and name your wig. I didn't know that was a thing. I
You had to have
this.
some fun. There was not a lot of fun in
No,
cancer.
I mean, you're just going to have to name. And what is it again?
This is Princess Consuela.
Correct. Okay. I love this so much.
Subscribe to our morning medical update and open mics with Dr. Stites podcast. Now, everywhere podcasts are available.